Started. All right, good evening and welcome to our community conversation on school safety. My name is Boyende Onijala and I'm the Executive Director of the Department of Communications and Community Outreach. I'm going to help facilitate this evening's conversation. We do have a packed agenda. We're going to try and get a lot in an hour, so I'm not going to talk as much. You all are here to hear from Dr. Rogers, and we will have a special guest join us. The police chief will be here if he's not already. So they will have a lot of great information to share with you. This topic is so important with everything that's happening across the nation. I know that everyone who's here tonight wants to learn more about BCPS's efforts to keep students and staff safe, and that is exactly what we're going to do this evening. So Dr. Rogers will have a few slides that she'll present on. We'll hear from the police chief. We'll then turn to our table neighbors and have some conversation discussion on 3 questions that will appear on the screen. We'll have you all report out. We'll walk around with microphones, have one person report out from each table. Following that, we'll have a general question and answer period, and then we'll get you all home to your families to have dinner to get ready for tomorrow. So thank you again for joining us. This is just the first conversation. We will have another one October 17th at Kenwood High School. Please spread the word, share with everyone who is a member of Team BCPS that we want to hear from you and we want to engage you in this very important conversation. I do want to recognize members of the board. I saw them just a second ago who are here. Ms. Dominowski, could you wave, members of the board? Back there. Our board chair, Tiara Booker-Dwyer, Dr. Savoy, Janie Lichter, Felicia Salusky, Rod McMillian, I think I saw him as well. Welcome, welcome. Did I say my, okay. If I miss anyone, let me know. And then we have Katie Malone representing Delegate Eric Ebersol. Thank you so much for joining us. All right, I think I got everyone, but if anyone else comes in during the presentation, we'll make sure that we acknowledge them as well. And so I want to invite the person you all are here to hear from. And that is Dr. Miriam Rogers, our superintendent. Dr. Rogers. And I have the clicker. Do you want it? Yeah.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for being here to engage in a solutions-based conversation around school safety. We really appreciate you being here, and as Ms. Onijala said, there's a few slides that I want to share with you proactively, just some information about what we've been doing in Baltimore County Public Schools, but really want to spend the balance of our time together engaging with you, giving you an opportunity to engage at your tables, you sharing some information with us, and then you asking some questions before we close out. And so this slide should be familiar to just about everyone who's here, just making sure that we're on the same page around our system priorities. Our system priorities for the 24-25 school year are the same as they were for 23-24 because we still have work to do. We know that we exist primarily to ensure that all students are learning at high levels and they're able to demonstrate that in a variety of ways. In order to do that, we need to have a sound, efficient, and effective infrastructure. We need people to do this work, highly effective staff members, but we also know that critical to this work is safety and climate, making sure that both technically as well as socially, emotionally, people feel safe. And by people, we're not only referring to the students, we're also referring to our staff members. And so I am appreciative of you taking out extra time to be a part of this conversation around our continued efforts related to safety and climate. This slide really talks about what guides and supports our work around safety and climate. Everyone knows that we have a code of conduct that we update annually. Those updates are based on our data as well as direct feedback from our principals by level about what is actually happening in schools and what information we need to share with our families. COMAR, which is the Code of Maryland Annotated Regulations, those are the Maryland State Department of Education laws and regulations that we need to follow as a school system. The Board of Education sets policy. For us, the policy around student behaviors is policy 5550, and around safety, we have a comprehensive safety plan that several volumes are posted on our website for family members and stakeholders to see. Some of the things that we've done as a school system are directly aligned with the National Center for School Safety recommendations for school systems. We have enhanced safety tools where we are leveraging technology to keep our students safe. Specifically, OmniAlert, we were able to roll out OmniAlert to all of our 176 schools last year. What that is AI overlaid on our cameras, our internal and our external cameras. It's a weapons detection system, which is in operation 24/7, 365 days a year. We're very grateful of the partnership that we have with Baltimore County government that helped us to send communication not only to our families, but to everyone that might be on school properties. Open Gate, we started that this year, particularly at our high schools and alternative schools. It's a portable weapons detection system. As families, students are going into our games, starting with the football season, you have the Open Gate system that will alert if there are anything that should not be at the game. The same thing for our alternative schools, and our alternative schools are in particular because those schools only have a single point of entry. We've extended our student safety assistant program. We have student safety assistants in all of our secondary schools. This year, we added student safety assistant leads, 2 for every single zone, and we've also added floaters, a cadre of floaters so that if there are needs that emerge in schools, that we're able to send extra assistance right away to those schools to provide support to the students and to the staff. We have an updated code of conduct, and just recently we sent reminders to our families to make sure that everyone was clear. As we started to notice what was happening across the nation with barely a month of school, we wanted our position to be very clear in Baltimore County Public Schools around fighting physical attacks, around streaming and videotaping incidents, around making threats to schools, as well as, there was one more. Recording weapons, as the last one was weapons. Just making sure that we were crystal clear on our position and what the consequences were for young people who made dangerous choices in our schools. We have also expanded access to mental and behavioral health services in our schools. Last year, we were able to expand Talkspace to students ages 13 and above at no charge. That remains operational. We also piloted the Cigna Student Support Line in 5 of our middle schools. In addition to that, at the beginning of this year, we announced receiving an $8 million grant from the state that allows us to provide mental health services to underinsured and uninsured students in 110 of our schools. Over the summer, we expanded our security vestibule construction. As many of you know, we have the 3rd oldest set of buildings in the state of Maryland. And so as a result of that, sometimes the design does not have a clear separation between the opening doors and the rest of the building. And so we have been very fortunate working with our county government and other partners to receive funding to add vestibules in our schools. And so several more vestibules were created in our schools, creating that separation over the summer. We've also launched the Stop Arm Bus Camera Enforcement Program. Today is the last day for warnings. We shared yesterday at our press conference that since we started giving warnings in a month of school, that we have had probably as of today 1,000 people go past buses that are either stopping for students to get on the bus or off the bus, which is dangerous, and we're asking people not to do that. We also continue to engage in emergency planning. We have a robust program with training, exercises, age-appropriate drills for our schools. We have threat assessments in our schools. We have 2 types of threat assessments. Our counselors, psychologists, and Social workers are all trained annually in our BSTAT model, and there's two types of threat assessments. One, if we believe a student is threatening to harm themselves, and another, which is modeled after the Columbia model, and another one if a student is potential harm to others. There is a very clear screening protocol that is followed by a team that is deployed to the school in the case of those types of emergencies. We've also developed a comprehensive plan to combat chronic absenteeism and reduce the barriers to school attendance. That resulted in Baltimore County Public Schools having the greatest reduction in chronic absenteeism in the state of Maryland this past year. We were able to reduce by more than 6%, and not only were we able to reduce in the aggregate, we saw those results by level, by zone, by student groups, as well as by service groups. We have bully prevention and reporting, making sure that all of those tools are available for our families so that if there is an incident, that families, students are reporting those instances to us, and that schools are reporting back to families the specific steps that have been taken. And we have also expanded our access to alternative education options. We've taken a look at our data and maximized the seats that we have available for students at the secondary levels, middle schools and high schools. We also added in our operating budget 8 different positions for virtual class teachers that were available to provide virtual access to students. And the reason that this is important for alternative education is not only is there the small setting in our alternative education schools, we also have wraparound services that are available for our students to receive the mental health support that is necessary. And so we do not have a capacity issue when it comes to matching students with the appropriate resources that they need if they're having difficulty in the comprehensive education environment. This slide talks about our student discipline reporting, comparing 22-23 to 23-24. We did not restrict any access to focus. All teachers had the same ability to report infractions in focus. What we noted was a decrease in the number of office referrals and a decrease in the number of alternative consequences, while we had an increase in the suspension rate for last year. Specifically, when we looked at Category 3 offenses, which are the most egregious offenses, some of the feedback that I heard from families last year in the community conversations were that as a school system, we had policies, we had rules that were written, but in terms of what people were seeing happen in schools with the consequences, there was a difference there. There was a misalignment between what our policies stated and what we actually implemented. And what we were able to see this year was that there was much closer alignment between our policies and our practice for our implementation. There were 80% of Category 3 offenses resulted in suspensions. Those included suspensions up to 10 days, as well as suspensions that resulted in expulsion, and 20% for alternative consequences, which is appropriate because you do have some infractions in some instances where the law does not allow for a student to be excluded from school, specifically around preschool age children or students where it is a manifestation of their disability. We also continue to provide more things to respond to the needs of Team BCPS. Parent University continues to be a great opportunity to provide families with resources and information about what the school system is doing and what they can access. Our student leaders have done great work, and I'm very excited about the work that they're doing this year, not only on mental health awareness, but also on safety campaigns, working together with the state of Maryland. Our own student member of the board, Ugoma Chikekalu, she is leading a student advisory focused solely on safety, where she is going to be partnering with the school system so that students are speaking to other students about what is important and what their collective responsibilities are in keeping all of us safe. We launched a cell phone pilot program this year in our secondary schools, where we were going to take 16 volunteers. We had 19 volunteers. We have been to several of those schools, and I can tell you, cell phones are not out in those schools. We use the pouch where we provided for them, but we've also expanded based on feedback from students and from principals, other tools that they can use, including clear boxes and pouches that are on the desk. One thing that we have heard from our students is they want to be able to see that phone. They don't want it to be too far away from them. We're okay with the students seeing the phone as long as they are not touching the phone and they're engaging in instruction. And so far, so good. We're receiving a lot of good feedback, but more importantly, the focus is on instruction during those class periods. And then, of course, to make sure that we're providing community updates on a regular basis in different languages so that we are just crystal clear about our priorities in Team BCPS and what the potential consequences are for certain behaviors in our schools. At this time, I am going to turn this over to our Chief of Police. As Chief McCullough comes forward, I have to share with you all that he has been an absolute great partner in this work. He is available 24/7. He is extremely responsive. And when we receive those threats or something important is happening in the community, he is texting me right away. We are always available to each other and available throughout the night, along with our Department of Schools, our Division of Schools, our Department of Safety, to make sure that we are staying in communication and we're putting in place any steps that need to be taken to make sure that our students are taken care of. And so I do want to offer Chief McCullough the opportunity to share a few remarks about our partnership and some of the work that we do together.
I want to first thank Dr. Rogers because she truly has been a fantastic partner. I've now been in law enforcement for 39 years of my life, and all here in Baltimore County. And I can tell you, and it's not to speak negative of any previous superintendents, but she has been the best in terms of communication and her accessibility and immediately responding no matter what time of day or what time of night. She's there, and the communication's just been phenomenal. And I want to congratulate now Mr. Knox, Eric Knox. He was Sergeant Knox. We spent quite a bit of our career together, and I can tell you, I've been the Homeland Security Commander for Baltimore County, but I also was an outreach sergeant and outreach lieutenant in the Woodlawn Precinct, where the SRO program started. And I was involved with this program from the very beginning. And as many of you know, our SRO program is one of the most robust SRO programs in the nation and one of the oldest SRO programs in the nation, to the point that people like Don Bridges and Eric Knox, they're basically experts to everybody else across the nation. People reach out to them, and I know Don Bridges actually goes around the country teaching the topic of school resource officers. Tony, it's good to see you tonight also. The Baltimore County Police Department's committed to the safety of our children. And just as I've told you, I've been involved with this process, and the safety of our kids for a long time, since 1998. And I'm proud that the program has evolved, and I'm proud of what it is today. The fact that we've spread from our high schools to our middle schools, to now that we're even involved with our grade schools across Baltimore County. And we're committed to growing our SRO program even further. We're doing things in terms of educating and adding more resources to our SRO program. We recently also added an additional supervisor to our SRO program. When retired Sergeant Knox was in charge, he had the entire county We've since split the county in half, and we have an additional sergeant that actually oversees half the county, and the other sergeant oversees the other side of the county. Whether it's a threat of mass violence or a simple assault case, we handle everything in Baltimore County with a sense of urgency, and that information not only flows from the ground level from our police officers, but every single case and every single incident actually flows to my phone real time. And that communication goes from me to Dr. Rogers every day. We're concerned about our kids. There's always the controversy of, guns being in the schools, and we talk about that type of stuff. And we're always being vigilant of weapons being in the school, but we also realize whenever our SROs are in the school, there's always a weapon in the school. And just to reiterate, just to emphasize this point, is the fact that we train our officers to make sure that they're aware of that fact, that whenever they're involved in something, that there's always a weapon there, and we train them to make sure that they know how to not only protect the students and staff in the school, but to protect themselves also. So we make sure that we're always safety conscious and continuously committed to making sure that we keep the school environment safe. We're also committed to the fact that not only do our SROs patrol our schools, but we also have our patrol officers and supervisors stopping into our schools on a daily basis, making sure that they're checking on the SROs, checking on the school staff. The beginning of the year, school year, for the first couple of weeks, even my exec corps, my commanders, all of them were assigned schools, and all of us, including myself, were out daily checking in with our schools, checking in with the staff, making sure that everything's okay. We, of course, frequently work with the school system in conducting tabletop exercises and other exercises throughout the year. We also work with our partners in the fire department to make sure, in terms of emergency preparedness, that we're ready, and if something was to happen, that we can immediately respond and handle those situations appropriately. And in addition to that, we also, our special operations capabilities, our SWAT team, our K-9, we train them, and we train around the school environments. Even when the schools aren't in, we utilize those facilities. We utilize the diagrams of those facilities to prepare. As you go around Baltimore County now, you see the numbers on the doors. You see the numbers on the windows. All of those things are part of our emergency preparedness program in the county that enables the school to identify what they need to identify, but it enables the police department, our officers, when they respond, to give them basically a shortcut or a shorthand way to figure out where they need to be around the building from the outside and entering. With that, I don't know if you want me taking any questions or anything. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, so here's what's going to happen next. My colleagues are going to walk around with chart paper. We do have some space at these tables where we already had like markers and pens and cards for you to write questions down if you feel like moving. If not, we will bring them to you. But we are going to reflect on these 3 questions you see on the screen. I know it might be hard for you all to see it back there, so I'll read them out loud. The first question, do you have any specific suggestions for enhancements around school safety and climate? Next one, how can the community better support school and system safety efforts? And the final question we'd like you all to discuss at your table, are there any resources or supports that would be helpful for parents and caregivers, especially as you have conversations with your children about some of these really tough topics, about things that we're seeing happening across the nation and experiences they may be having in the community or at school. So we're gonna spend just a few minutes talking to each other at the table. We ask that you write down your responses, ideas on the chart paper. Once we're done kind of conducting the small table conversation, we're going to come around and have you pick one spokesperson to report out. We know that you're going to write down a lot of things. You will not be able to read out everything on your chart paper. So think about the top thing from maybe the 2 out of 3 questions. We want to maximize our time together. As you look around, we have a lot of people here tonight. And so we want to make sure there's also time for our general question and answer session in which Dr. Rogers and the police chief will be happy to answer some of your more specific questions around our safety efforts. So we're going to do this for a couple of minutes. I'll come around, you'll hear me back on the mic, give a 2-minute warning, then a 1-minute warning, and I'll ask us to bring it back together. Then we'll come from each table and have you report out on what you all have discussed. Again, we're going to ask you to keep it very brief. If you start to go on and on, I will pull the mic away so we can, again, get to other tables. So make sure you pick a spokesperson who is going to be very brief in sharing out with all of us here tonight. All right, thank you. That, I do want to recognize Miss Vanessa Brooks, who is here representing Delegate N. Scott Phillips. Vanessa Brooks, are you here? Somewhere back there, welcome, welcome. Delegate McCaskill, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. I know the student board member, Ugoma Chikekalu, joined us, welcome. And all of our other special guests, thank you for being here. Ignore. Thank you. If you need the questions again, first question is, do you have any specific suggestions for enhancements around school safety and climate? How can the community better support school and system safety efforts? And are there any resources or supports that would be helpful for parents and caregivers? Thank you. if you're not already on question 2, you'll want to start making your way to question 2. How can the community better support school and safety system safety efforts? And then the last question, are there any resources that would be helpful for parents and caregivers? All right, this is your 2-minute warning. 2-minute warning to start wrapping up your thoughts, getting it down on chart paper so you're ready to report out. We have 2 minutes left for this part of the conversation. All right, let's come together. We are going to start reporting out. I don't see it. So skip. Okay, all right, we'll skip. Okay, all right, let's come together. If I could have your attention, please. Again, just to share our housekeeping rules. Please keep your sharing out to focus on the 3 questions that were on the screen. I sincerely ask you all, there are a lot of people in this room tonight. We want to get to every table. 30 seconds or less. Share a point from each question maximum, because there's still going to be an opportunity for general question and answer. So we'll start at this table here. Who is your spokesperson? You're still writing? Okay, next table. Marlena? Okay. All right, again, short points. One or two. And please don't take the microphone. I will hold on to the microphone. Thank you.
That's so she can control.
Good evening, everyone. We had a 4-member group at this table. 2 things that we're going to express to go off of there. For the first one, we wanted to see if we could have drill terms given to the parents and guardians, such as the lockdown or any vocabulary that's being expressed in the classrooms, so that we as parents and guardians can be able to say the same language at home. And then the last one, we're going to do, we need to make sure our parents are holding our children accountable. We can't continue to say, no, not my child. We need to recognize that the students are in the classrooms, the safety personnel are here for their help, and we need to be able to hold them accountable to whatever it is that they have been accused of.
Thank you, Ms. Purcell. All right, Charlie.
Good evening, everyone. So we spoke on the first question, which was, do you have any specific suggestions for enhancements around school safety and climate? Okay, and so we focus on cell phone policies, and one of the things that we talked about was social media and how that affects children and how that affects their safety and like confidence and things like that. And so what we said was that starts before the actual building. That starts before before they walk into the school. So we said that parents could start to work on those things before, affirming their children, helping them with their confidence, so that by the time they do start getting on social media and those things, the confidence has already started being built, along with the guidance counselor. That's something that could be partnered.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Please keep it brief. I'm going to do my best and I'll speak again later. So the biggest piece in terms of the suggestions for enhancement is about communication and making sure that parents are notified when their child is exposed to violence in the community or inappropriate things in the community. Making sure that parents are notified when that happens, that generally the communication is clear, that the language of we can't share information about other students is not used as a tool to not share information about our own students. So that's a piece. Sure, so the social emotional follow-up is the other piece. So what is happening to support students who've been exposed to violence and threats in the community? And also I want to know more about threat assessments.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, we have one more.
We have concerns about inadequate staff in the building, particularly because there's a lot of substitute teachers, not enough student support for kids with disabilities. We're concerned about a lack of a plan to follow for kids with disabilities when they come into the nurse's office, and making sure that people are checking IDs when they come into the building.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Hi. One thing our group talked about was the difference between safety of people coming in and out of the school, which I think, the vestibule and having check-in, that stuff is great. And then the safety that comes up from discipline concerns within the school with the students themselves, and how having resources for the children to be able to advocate for themselves and have the right words, as well as things for the workshops for the parents for specific topics, as well as enough resources in particular for special ed and psych and therapy and things like that.
Thank you.
can you say your name? Okay, here we are with Pedro Cobo. He's a 5th grader in West Town. And he shared with the team that today he had an Alice drill and they work in a safe place. He explained how the teacher and the personnel took him to a safe place and they practice. But after the drill, Pedro has more questions like what happens if we have an event, a scary event, when we are in recess? Because now I don't know what to do.
Thank you. Okay, over here.
We also discussed students with disabilities. The schools need more training around, like all personnel need more training around disabilities to help keep all of the students safe. There's, because especially like during an emergency, those are the students who will need more support, so you need to have more training there.
Thank you. All right. You're good? Good. We're good? All right, my folks.
So at our table, we have a mixture of parents, and I'm also a teacher. And part of our conversation was that each of us have had some type of threat made at the school where his daughter felt unsafe going to school. Her son was accosted during a football game. So we wanted to find out what kind of proactive communication can be given, an action plan, something that's less vague when incidents like this happen at schools.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks. So Arabic is now the second most spoken language in Baltimore County Public Schools. So I'd like to know, especially with a lot of newcomers coming into the county, what is the county doing to address bullying to students who are newcomers but identify as Arab and Muslim, and especially also from teachers that are doing their own thing with curriculum, but also addressing anti-Arab and anti-Muslim rhetoric that's happening on the news that's seeping into the classroom. So I'd like to know what Baltimore County is doing to provide services and safety measures for our students, especially those who don't speak the language, and how they can advocate for themselves and create a safer environment for their students and their communities as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Stand, and I'll hold the mic.
It's a little tight back here. Oh, there we go. Okay. So we had a couple discussions. The first one was about cell phone policy, and we talked about giving the teacher the discretion to make a judgment about phone usage, because we had discussed that there may be some girls who don't necessarily want to go to the vice principal's office because they wanted to contact their parents about,
Okay.
girls. And we had two more.
One more.
Oh, okay, one more. Keep guns out of school with whatever it takes, including metal detectors.
Thank you. All right. Did we get to all of the tables? Oh.
Thank you. Oh, so this is a little bit outside the box, but safety, like we've heard, begins at home. And one of the issues that I would love to just kind of bring up is the bus routes and issues with when children are not being picked up. We've had several occasions where they're standing outside by themselves 45 plus minutes and, kind of get bored, push each other in the street. It gets worrisome, and there's really just no communication around it. When there's buses that aren't going to show up, if they're late, as parents, we don't know what to do. And there doesn't seem to be a point of contact at the schools who's like running things, nor do the bus people answer the phone when we call to find out what's going on. So,
okay. Thank you. Did we get to all of the tables? I think we got to that table already. Yeah, we got to that table. Okay. Okay, so Dr. Rogers is going to speak a bit to what she heard from the table conversations, and then we're going to open it up for a general question and answer.
All right, thank you. The first thing is I want to thank all of you for participating actively in this session. I was taking my own notes in shorthand and want to respond to some of what you raised this evening. The first thing is I want to talk to Pedro in the 5th grade, who asked a really good question about what happens if there's an emergency situation and you're in an unstructured place, like you're in the cafeteria or you're in the hall. One of the things that your school is going to teach you about, we call it situational awareness, and that's teaching students how to look for the closest place that's a safe place if there's an emergency. So sometimes there's an emergency and you're right there inside of a classroom, and so your teacher will tell you what to do. But sometimes you may be on the way to the bathroom, you may be in the cafeteria. What you're going to look for is the closest adult, and they're going to sweep the hall and bring you into a place where they can lock. With the Alice drill, it's a little different than what we used to teach students about lockdown, that we always stay in a place and always crouch down. It all depends on the situation, but the adult will give guidance about what to do next. And so, Pedro, the answer is you look for the closest adult. If you don't see an adult quickly, you go to a place where there's a door and you can be behind the door, okay? All right. Now, some of the other things that I heard, I think it's a great request and reasonable request and something we can send out quickly around the drill terms. What are these terms that we're using in school, particularly when your kids come home and they share this is what they talked about, and you want to make sure the conversation that you're having with them is the same conversation that we're having in school. And so that's something we can turn around very quickly, and we can send out as a message, a blast in multiple languages to our families, so you don't have to go looking for it on our website. I did hear some comments about affirming children, helping to build their self-esteem from the beginning, parents holding students accountable for behaviors. You know, we talked about this yesterday about being on the same page as a community and a school, making sure that we have shared expectations for students, that families, caregivers, parents, guardians, it's okay to look in those backpacks. It's okay to look at those phone messages, to look at what's happening on social media and asking questions. And if you've asked questions and you don't receive answers that are satisfactory to you, that's when we say reach out to the school, reach out to the administrator, reach out to the counselor, reach out to the teacher. And if you still feel dissatisfied after that communication, every school has an executive director that's assigned to that school. That's the supervisor for that specific school location. We have several of our executive directors of school who are here this evening. They report directly to our chief of schools, Dr. Jones, who is here. And so please, families, don't feel that if you are communicating with the school and you still feel that there's some unanswered questions, that you have no one to turn to. Absolutely, you can refer to the executive director of school to get some questions, or the executive directors, many times they facilitate conversations between the school and the parent so that you can get to resolution. We heard about communications. We work very hard to make sure that we're sending out letters of incidents to families when something happens in the school. We always, sometimes, or many times, social media will beat us, because what's very important for us is to make sure that we're sending accurate information, to make sure that we're checking in with our police partners, to make sure that we are allowed to release information and the information that we're releasing is accurate, which sometimes is not the same threshold for other people who are putting messages on social media. And so we do know that social media many times will beat us, but what you can be assured is the information that we provide is accurate information to our families. And we will continue to work to improve our messaging, so you as families, even if you've heard something on social media or your student has said something to you, that you do receive that follow-up communication from the school, so that you can be assured that we as a school system are aware and the steps that we're taking. Social emotional support for our students. As I think everybody is clear that we've been very clear about infractions, disciplinary infractions, as well as holding students accountable in our schools. But at the same time, we've also doubled down our efforts to provide social emotional support for our students. We want our students to be well. We want them to have an outlet to know how to communicate and resolve conflict in the right way. And so that's why we have increased supports in schools. We have the telehealth, mental health support services, and our community schools not only have mental health supports, but also medical health supports for our students and families. Safety, discipline, resources, and workshops. That's another great request, and it's a reasonable request. That we all smile because he's cute, and that's why we're here. And that's a reasonable request for us to have additional workshops. I would love to hear, if you can, anecdotally before you leave, what might be some of those specific workshops so that we make sure that what we're providing really meets your needs, so that we can deliver that. What we want to do is really partner with our families, because the last piece of really keeping schools safe is the community part with the schools. We can leverage technology, we can have rules, we can give consequences after something happens, but really the proactive work happens with what's happening at home and making sure that we're aware of it to diffuse, de-escalate, and when necessary, call our police partners in to help us to mitigate circumstances. There was a request for additional special education supports and training for our teachers, widespread, more than just the special educators in a building, particularly around emergencies. I can share with you that our executive director, Allison Myers, for special education is all in and 100% committed to doing whatever it takes to continue to meet the needs of our staff members. And so that's something that I definitely know the one person who shared it and would love to hear a few specific examples from you, but if there are others in the room who can think of, because I know we have educators here, of trainings that would be helpful for general educators and other school staff around meeting the needs of special education students, please share that with us before you leave, or send us an email to our open contact us email box so we have that and we're matching your needs with what it is that we're offering. There was a request around newcomer students and how are we responding to bullying, specifically around students who identify as Arab or Muslim, as well as to any rhetoric that represents hate. I can share with you, we have said this last year and we continue to say that hate has no place in our schools. The moment that we hear of anything that is inappropriate, we immediately investigate. In terms of the supports that we provide to schools, we have a cultural proficiency office led by Doug Handy, as well as specialists that we deploy to schools. They do work to speak directly to students. They speak to staff members to identify what exactly has happened and to create space for students to not only share their experience, but share what they need to feel safe. In terms of anything with adults that are involved in anything inappropriate, we follow our investigation, and based on the outcomes of investigation, that's how we take those next steps. And so I would encourage, and we also have a new director of multilingual education, Sandra Blotner, who is definitely dedicated, has more than 30 years experience in this area, multilingual herself. I would encourage anyone who has any information indicating that a student has experienced something to have them report it directly to the school or directly to Mr. Handy. So many times he goes out directly to the school, or his specialist from the school will go out so that we can resolve the situation. We also provide training to staff members around our expectations. Cell phones. We spoke a little bit earlier around the cell phone pilots and what we're seeing early signs in schools. I did hear about the request to have some discretion around cell phones. The one thing that we know is that if we want cell phones to be off and away, everyone has to be consistent in terms of implementation. We do have ways for students to reach out to family members. In the example I heard, I don't think I heard around an emergency. In an emergency situation, as we shared, the phones are close enough next to the student that the student will be able to access their individual phones. But in a non-emergency situation, students are allowed to go to the office. If they don't want to go to an assistant principal, they can certainly go to a counselor or to a trusted, another trusted adult that's in that building to use the phone. But we know enough based on the research, the impact and the disruption of cell phones, whether it's to the individual student and the algorithms that are bombarding them with messages that are not helpful to them, or just misinformation or conflict between students, that it is really disruptive for them and it is not a healthy tool for our young people to be using in our schools. The last comment that I had in my notes was around safety and sometimes parents not picking up kids and they're alone, and sometimes the bus might be tardy, and a lack of responsiveness around that. We do have our Chief Operating Officer who is here with us this evening, Dr. Grimm, who can take some more specific information and just speak to you offline specifically around phone numbers to call and contact, and for us to look if there are any specific routes with any patterns where it's not an anomaly around lateness, for us to address that as a school system.
Thank you, Dr. Rogers. So at this time, we are going to open it up for general questions. We're going to get to as many as we can. We do want to be respectful of people's time, and we know folks have to get home and get ready for the next day. A reminder, you have to keep your question brief. I know you may have backstories and history you want to include with your question. You can provide that to the executive directors. If you could waive executive directors so they know that you're here. So if there's a very specific situation involving your child, we ask that you do not get on the microphone and share private student information. That is for our executive directors of schools, our executive director of school safety. They are here to answer your specific questions. So please refrain from sharing violent stories, other things that may be triggering for folks who are in this room, and keep your questions brief. So we'll start here.
So I wanted to follow up just on what this lady asked about the buses. So the bus that my daughter is on, there's 3 to a seat, there's kids standing. The driver's taken off before kids are even seated. So obviously that's not a safe situation to have kids standing or crushed into a seat. So I know that there's a big shortage of drivers and things like that, but are there steps being taken to make sure that kids are being transported to and from school in a safe manner?
Yes, so thank you for that. We do not, in Baltimore County, have a significant shortage of drivers. What I will ask that you do is the same thing that I asked for this young lady, which is to speak to Dr. Grimm to give specific information. So one of the wonderful parts of having this new partnership around bus safety is we have upgraded cameras with audio inside of our buses, in addition to the cameras that are outside. And so any claims can quickly be investigated. We can go on the cloud to get the information and then take the necessary steps to address it. So thank you.
Dr. Rogers? Dr. Rogers, over here.
You are.
My name's Avery. I'm in 6th grade, and I would feel safer if there were security guards inside of the doors.
Well, thank you, Avery. We do have some safety assistants. I will speak with you offline to find out your school and where they are and how we can help with that.
Dr. Rogers, I really thank you for what you are doing, and also thank the chief for what he is doing for Baltimore County. Just a question, briefly. The technology is very important, but also the training and the adequacy of the staff. So my question to you, what have you done or planning to do to make sure the staff can differentiate a harmful behavior that leads to violation versus an unharmful behavior that is natural or casual and should not really be suspicious?
So thank you for that question. We definitely agree that the training is important, and as we rolled out OmniAlert, one of the things that we did was provide professional development to everyone that was going to be responsible for OmniAlert. So that includes our school administration. It includes obviously our SROs that the police partnered with us to do that, as well as any other personnel that school staff deemed was appropriate to be in the line of communication around an alert. The good thing about using a company like OmniAlert is there is the alert that comes out, but then they have the experts that verify it within a number of seconds, and then they choose to send an alert to the schools. For us, it's the schools, emergency personnel, as well as the Department of Safety. But as a school system, we're 100% committed to professional development. It's one of the reasons why we invested in 30 professional development days over the summer. And as we deployed OmniAlert, one of the pieces was required school training and tests before we made it fully operational in our 176 sites.
Hi, I just wanted to report from the parent perspective that I've experienced mixed messaging. So in line with the school and my middle schooler's principal, I would insist that my daughter's cell phone be shut down. She could only contact us in case of an emergency. But she was saying that she could not participate in some of the class activities. So an example would be like Kahoots, where the teachers would do like quizzes, and she would say, "Mom, I can't participate." And so I spoke with the counselor, and the counselor vouched that in many cases it is being used as a tool in a classroom. So I just wanted to share that at the higher up, it's on and away or off and away, but in that classroom, sometimes our kids are being asked to participate in class activities that involves a cell phone.
Well, let me say thank you for telling. We appreciate that. We're not going to name you, but I appreciate that information, because we have Chromebooks that have every app on them that are on Wi-Fi. So there really is no need to use a device. And you do put a student in a tricky situation, if nothing else, between the parent and the student when they're trying to explain why they're using the technology. Certainly, it is much easier for a student to pull out a cell phone and scan in a QR code as opposed to take out all the Chromebooks and do that work. But we should not be putting students in that situation. And so that is good information for us to have. We will send out a reminder and different, we have a whole suite of tools that teachers can use in Google and outside of Google to access things like Kahoot, where they're taking those quizzes and competing, preparing for an assessment. And so that is great information for us to have, and we'll certainly follow up.
Hi there. I have a couple things. First,
one question.
So social, emotional, and assessment. First of all, with assessment. So I've been asking a lot of people, including in your office, Mr. Knox, over the last week about what safety threat assessment we're using that's evidence-based. Tonight you said Dewey Cornell, which is great. I haven't been able to get that information from anyone in the school or out of the school for the last week. With that said, Dewey Cornell is a psychologist, but not an assessment tool. He created an assessment tool, but I do not believe we've purchased that assessment tool. And so I am curious what we are doing in terms of assessments and evidence-based assessments. I'm also curious when we think about the three-tiered approach in social emotional, individual, group, and whole school. What you've addressed in terms of social emotional support is often individual. We've got mental health folks and in the schools. What is happening to support students in the group when a threat or violence has happened in that group, and how are we debriefing without then putting them in the position of having to try to learn without having debriefed the unsafe moment? So I'll leave it at that.
So thank you for that. I will ask you to speak with Ms. Mustafer, and she can speak to you directly about our two tools. I shared earlier the two tools that we use. They are the tools that we use for harm to self versus harm to others. Those are confidential tools. They have suggested interview questions that the trained team goes through, and there's some heads shaking, probably some related service providers in the room that go through the tools when a situation presents itself. And so absolutely we have tools. They're confidential, and Ms. Mustafer can give you more information for that. We have specific tools that we use, two different kinds. One, if it's involving a student with harm potentially to themselves, suicidal ideation, and a different tool if the student potentially could be a harm to others. Ms. Mustafer is walking towards you. She can share additional information regarding that. And in terms of overall how we give students space when there's been a scary incident to discuss, Ms. Mustafer's office has created the actual tool and the training that teachers have received, as well as the framing for the conversations that teachers can engage in with students to process their emotions and their feelings. Sometimes that happens through the counselor coming to the classroom, but other times it happens with the actual teacher. And so what I am sensing from your question is perhaps there was an incident that you are aware of at work or with your child where this did not occur. And what I would say to every family member that is here is when an incident happens in school and you feel like there is a step that is missing, reach out immediately to that school. Reach out immediately, if you have a relationship with the counselor, to the counselor, if not to the school administrator. If not, it's very easy for you to find Ms. Mustafer and her team. I see Courtney Brown here. She also leads this work for us in our schools. We are willing to help schools that need additional support, but as parents and community members, if something happens and you don't feel like the response is adequate, communicate with us so that we can follow through in that instance. Where's Charlie?
I can go. Oh, thank you, Dr. Rogers. Yes, so at my high school, we had our second pistol confiscated in 3 years, and I've heard from students about another incident where one may have been pulled in a bathroom. So my question is, what would it take for the county to make it virtually impossible, with the exception of SROs, for a gun to get inside the building, and things like metal detectors, clear backpacks, wanding. I know it's a logistical nightmare. I know it's expensive, but because I feel like that really is like the thing. No one wants anyone to die, and that's what would do it, right? And so what would we need to do to make it virtually impossible for a gun to get inside the buildings?
So I thank you for that question, and no, that's not what would do it. In the same way that we're being proactive around, we've heard from our families, we see from our students the negative impact of cell phones. We are in full support of any school that wants to pilot clear backpacks. We have brought Open Gate to our athletic facilities because there's one entrance and exit. We brought Open Gate to our alternative schools because they always also have one entrance and exit. When you talk about the secondary schools, based on the number of students, not only are there designated, let's say in a middle school you have 3 designated entrances by grade or by the way that the student arrives at school. In high school you might have near the gym where the athletes go and drop off their belongings first, where you have near the cafeteria, kids go to breakfast, and then the main entrance. Not only do you have that, but you have where for school safety, buildings have been designed, in some cases, upward of 80 exterior doors. And so when you're talking about a metal detector system, and I think I will invite the chief if he'd like to make some comments around it. A lot of the research that we've heard about is that they're not effective in those situations where you have multiple points of entry and exit. There are some places that utilize the clear backpacks so that everyone at all times can see what's in them. I am not, we as a school system are not averse to piloting that. I'm happy to make sure that someone has a conversation with you to see if we can open up that conversation in your school and see what other secondary schools want to start it. And one of the reasons why we have pilots is so we can learn from the pilots, what we need for implementation and whether or not it's effective for us to scale up across the system. And so happy to have that conversation with you. But that's some of the expert findings that we have heard around why they are not as effective when you have a high school with 80 doors to cover around metal detectors. But I definitely am willing to have that conversation with you.
I'm sorry. Hello, just a comment as that I'm a teacher, and it was an attack in my school, like kind of squabble situation, but it was harmful behavior. And students and parents, in fact, reached me and asked about clear guidelines about videotaping in classroom, in extreme situations, what to do and what to don't. That includes teachers. Nobody heard the teachers who teach like 200 students are in fact humans who work 16 hours a day, need to stand and smile, and that's what it is. Second, I have two questions. One unrelated, but yes, languages. So may I talk about languages?
So let her answer your first one and then.
So first, I appreciate the work that you do as a teacher and clear guidelines around videotaping. That's one of the things that we were seeing and we were concerned about. We're concerned for a few reasons about students who make choices when there is danger to videotape the incident and then put it on social media. Number one, if there is danger, I would like you to remove yourself from danger when you have an opportunity to do that. And number two, if you see something bad happening to someone, the right thing to do is to look for help, not to stand there, videotape it, and then post it. And so in the addendum that we've just sent to families a few days ago, we address our expectations around videotaping. Students are not allowed to videotape, and it is a Category 2 offense where administrators will be issuing consequences around students who choose to videotape dangerous incidents.
We're going to take two more questions, one here and one here.
Hi. In this specific school year, in many elementary schools in this Catonsville area, there are many children who were previously in self-contained classes that are now in general ed classes without adequate support. That impacts all of the students' ability to learn, but more than anything, contributes to some students acting out against others, which is a safety aspect we haven't really discussed yet. What has changed in this school year, be it budget or staffing or whatever, that is going to be done, and what will be done to keep these students safe, specifically in elementary school?
So I would ask that you speak with Ms. Myers. I think you might be talking about the integrated service model. As part of the budget, there was increased staffing provided specifically around special education students, K through 12, as well as pre-K and kindergarten. We also increased adult assistance and the specialty area teachers to meet those needs. And I would say that when we opened school, there were very few vacancies in those areas. And so I think providing Ms. Myers with some specific details around the subject that you're speaking to, and she can provide a response, and we can follow up to find out exactly what's happening there. The budget was actually increased for special education for FY25 year.
All right, our final question is here. And just a note, if we didn't get to you, you do have cards on your table. We are collecting all of the cards and all of the chart paper. We write up everything for Dr. Rogers so she can see what your thoughts and concerns and questions are. And then this is information that we have an opportunity to share out in different venues and more community conversations. So please note that if we didn't get to you tonight, there's still many opportunities for you to share your thoughts with the school system.
Going back to digital safety, thanks for working on the implementation of cell phone policy. I know it's a big task to take on. But the kids have Chromebooks, like you said, and frankly, a lot of them are a lot smarter on technology than us. The students have found a way to, again, bypass filters. They are doing something with the College Board app, which I can't even imagine. This is an elementary school. And they are able to bypass the filters, get on YouTube, as well as bypass Go Guardian, which is a teacher's gift from God. Yes. And so I would like to, how are we keeping up with the kids' ability to get beyond technology? And the response we got from technology was not that they can block it.
Okay, so we'll follow up on that response. That's one. And number two, I'll say that we're part of a clearinghouse across the nation with technology experts where they try to keep everyone updated on here's what's new in their area. You have school systems as well as government agencies on it. And so it's just that the students keep moving quicker than we do. And so it sounds like you reported it already, so we can follow up. The best thing that people can do is report some of these workarounds that you kind of hear students talking about, or your own children share with you that they know of, so we can, if we don't already know how to block and get around it, we can go to other experts to see how they can help us. So I appreciate you sharing that, and we'll certainly follow up. I'll talk to you offline.
Thank you, Dr. Rogers. Before she offers any closing remarks, I do want to ask our executive directors of schools to please stand again so our attendees can see you and can make a beeline for you at the conclusion of the event. But in all seriousness, these are the folks who are here to support you and answer your questions specifically about what's going on at your child's school. So at the end of the event, they will be available to you. She also mentioned Dr. Jess Grimm, who's somewhere around here, our Chief Operating Officer. Dr. Raquel Jones, our Chief of Schools, is available. So there are a number of staff personnel who are here to help problem solve and troubleshoot with you. And then we also encourage you to pick up some resources on your way out. Come join us October 17th at Kenwood High School. We will continue the conversation. Dr. Rogers, your closing remarks.
Yes, I truly just want to thank all of you for being here, for being open, for sharing constructive solutions with us, many things that we can move forward with very quickly, and just being a part of the conversation. And so I invite you not only to come to the next session, but to bring a friend to the next session, and just say thank you for being a part of Team BCPS, and look forward to the continued conversation. Thank you.